yeah, I mean, the love of this show is unsurprising to me. As someone who has witnessed firsthand through living in America the depressing impacts of a failing capitalistic system and society, it makes sense why this is popular. It makes sense why it resonates both within South Korea as well as externally, like internationally. That there's lots of countries that like are fascinated with this concept in the show because it is relevant in other areas where capitalism is present. And honestly, being from a generation who has widely witnessed and fallen victim to the impacts of mass debt, which I'll get into in terms of how that is brought up within like South Korean society, as well as like low pay despite being highly educated, that has left us either unable to afford housing, unable to afford our loans, unable to afford basic living needs. The message of Squid Games is like very deliberate and pointed. And it's interesting because South Korea has delivered some of our favorite capitalism critiques when we think Parasite, Snowpiercer, and they hold a special place in our hearts. And I think Squid Games, because of what it is trying to say in a lot of ways, will always hold a special place in our heart. And especially because it's a show instead of a movie, it was able to flesh out some things that otherwise might have needed to be rushed, which I think really lends well to the platform that it's in. But it's something that like I did not know about Korean society, but that, you know, it's really doing a good job showing the vast income disparities, the extensive debt, and how that impacts the society. And as capitalism generally is, the inspiration behind the show is pretty bleak in terms of what's happening. So fun fact coming to you from a Vox article titled "What Squid Games Fantasies and Harsh Realities Reveal About Korea," written by Asia Romaro. Netflix has seen a fantastic payoff from their decision to invest $500 million in Korean entertainment in 2021, which has resulted in a stock boom. So yay for them. The irony being that Squid Games is entirely about socio-economical divides, the exploitation of the poor by the rich, and the desperation of Korea's financial destitute class of laid-off workers. It's kind of ironic that Netflix is making a lot of money off of it.
They are the rich elite.
Yep.
In the masks.
Yep.
That's the American audience.
Yep. And I mean, honestly, with that information, hopefully with the giant magnifying glass zooming in on all the corruption and exploitation, as horror is often used as a catalyst for social change, hopefully that starts to take place through this understanding that it is necessary on a global scale. Hopefully capitalism just dies. That's my dream.
Same.
So hopefully that happens, and that the more media we see that kind of like fleshes this out in a way that's digestible, entertaining, and also like meaningful, that people, instead of just watching it to watch it with media analysis classes and use this as an opportunity to learn something and hopefully change the world, because it sucks. But something we see within the show does a great job of giving a less than subtle nod to class issues within South Korea, highlighting worker strikes and the violence done upon them by exploitative companies, a younger generation largely impacted by debt that leaves them financially incapable of taking care of their elders or themselves, the horrors of individuals under immigrant status face from exploitative companies within South Korea, and the societal pressures to thrive and attend expensive schools in hopes of reaching a higher income bracket, which I think is pretty like evident there with I think his name was Sung-woo. Yeah, his character kind of showcases like even if you get out of the income bracket that you are within, there's still so much risk, and like specifically if you're within this kind of everyone is in debt society, it becomes easier to take on more debt and take on more risks because you've already set a precedent for that.
Yeah, and you're also like you don't want to go back. You don't want to fall through. So you make more desperate and like risky actions to hold that place in society, and so then you're more victim to make those mistakes than to be stuck there.
Yeah, it's the matter of pride. And also the fact that he had his mom's business as collateral.
Yep.
Um, something that may be very relatable to Americans from the millennial and Z generations is the concept of mass debt. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of student loans and credit card debt because poverty. So that's super fun. I'm sure many can relate to that situation. Debt that is so high it keeps you from being able to afford housing or other basic needs. I have no resources to buy a home. You know what I mean? Like it's and previous
in this economy.
Yeah, and like compared to previous generations that otherwise were able to achieve those things, that it was more so expectation of aging. Like you reach your 20s and mid to late 20s, you will have had a house. You will have started a family. That is not something that is readily available to people of our generations who have extensive amounts of money that they owe so that they cannot create a space for themselves to live happily. Yeah. As well as like signing loans for a degree that we were told as children would give us better access to jobs, but that has instead left us overqualified and under or unemployed. An article on NBC News titled "Squid Game is entertaining the world, but there's a different feeling in South Korea," written by Jennifer Kent and Stella Kim. It speaks on what this is like within South Korea. The article highlights the success that South Korea saw in the 1960s due to rapid industrialization that has made it one of the world's 10th largest economies. But in many other countries, a university degree and a white-collar job doesn't guarantee the financial security that it used to. So similar to like what we're dealing with here, they're dealing with there. With the average income of about $40,000 a year, many Koreans now find that they have to borrow in order to keep up. The influx of borrowing stem from low interest rates, which now has a household debt within South Korea equal to the country's annual GDP. Within the US, it's 80% of the annual GDP, but it's like it matches within South Korea. The cause of this debt development is multifaceted, but seems to stem from this precedent set with banks to begin the debt process. So if you think about like when you were going to college, if you go to college in America, you are immediately entered into this debt system to like kind of conceptualize it with something that like people from America might understand. Similar to that, debt is something that is so commonplace within South Korea that it's once you enter into it, it becomes easier to kind of wrap your head around that kind of investment. And once you've taken out a loan just to afford life, it becomes like part of your income in a sense. The article highlights the housing market as one of the causes, stating that the average price of an apartment has come close to $1 million. I don't know what that translates to here, but and it's continuing to rise with most of the population already seeking loans to afford basic needs. Their subjugation under corporations is inevitable. They now need this money to pay back their loans, and because of that are more likely to become victims of unjust labor practices and exploitation, which is something that we see within the show with our main character as he's having like PTSD flashbacks to a raid where he was a part of a union and they are trying to like stand up against this exploitative company, and he lost somebody, like someone died, and like the violence that was done upon them by these corporations that were just trying to continue, but they were in these situations where they needed that money. There was no, they can't like just not have a job and then just sit. Like that's not an option because they owe. There's a debt there that makes it so that they no longer can make decisions that allow for their own personal growth because now they are responsible for. Yeah, exactly. And you can't move if you're within a hole. It also leaves them more vulnerable to loan sharks and other high interest institutions that further the subjugation. So the article goes on to highlight the high risk, high reward situations many young people, specifically in South Korea, are seeking to get out of this loop. So if you think like within America, lottery tickets, using Robinhood, trying to like spend money to make money in a way that is high risk, but also would be high reward, would exit you out of this situation. But the problem with that is that if you're taking high risks, you could have a very negative impact from that. So specifically taking out loans to invest in cryptocurrency or gambling. If we think about the first episode, you have our main character, he's dealing with like, he has bet all the money that he got for his daughter's birthday on horses. Because that's not like something that's like so out there within like it. Betting on gambling and cryptocurrency is like seen as a way out of this financial struggle. But tying back to the article, when you look at the characters in the show who are participating in this game, they represent the demographic of Koreans who are in the worst possible situation because of their personal debt. Koo Si-woong, a commentator on Korean culture based in Germany, said. The story stems from a deeply rooted perception of how society looks at failure, especially individual financial failure. The fear of failure pushes many away from seeking bankruptcy and instead pushes them towards more risky solutions. As Gabe was saying, like pride is a big element of this. To commit or to declare bankruptcy is worse than dying. Like societally, it basically like scars your name, stars your family's name, and is not seen as something that's like safe to do. It's not a new beginning. It is like you have ended your entire adulthood. Like it is done now. So it's safer in these instances to bet on more risky things than just declaring bankruptcy, like in terms of like culturally. And it pushes people further towards the risk of having to take out these second tier lenders instead of like being at a bank, going to like loan sharks that can lead them down this path that we saw in a lot of the characters within Squid Game walking down. In fact, the article states that approximately 400,000 Koreans are in debt to loan sharks specifically, a number that could very well be higher if you're calculating like second tier lenders, which are ones with higher interest rates than if you were to go to a bank. So it's essentially people digging deeper and deeper holes for themselves that are nearly impossible to get out of. Comparing this to like my upbringing is deeply rooted in this fear surrounding failure for like our entire generation. Having an entire generation so scared of failure that it gives out participation trophies. And something that many Americans, specifically millennials and the Z generation, can relate to, adults who are in their care being so scared of seeing their children experience failure that they remove all the safe ways to do so from all areas of their education. And within competition, when as a society, you don't allow failure, you don't allow like a bounce back. Once you fail, you're done. And that's not something that's going to allow for survival as well as success. It kind of further fuels this desire for quick fixes because the process of failing is just so incomprehensible. In South Korea, as I was saying, bankruptcy is seen as a devastating fate. In the show, we get this kind of highlight into that when a contestant is given the option to leave and instead chooses to go back. And it's in the regular world, it's not just the death of their body, it's the death of their pride. It's the shame of having to be seen as such an unsuccessful person in front of your family. And we kind of like get this window into that, and it's like really sad and relatable in a lot of ways. Like this kind of the way in which money rules the lives of so many just through the existence of capitalism, and like that it's not there to actually provide people with the things that they need. That's why within Squid Games, you have so many characters who are forced to be cruel when otherwise they maybe wouldn't have been. Because that is the only way you're going to make it in a system that is meant to set you up to step on the heads of others to succeed. And essentially, it's like there's people, another quote from the article, Margie Kim, a housewife in Seoul who's watching Squid Games with her family, said, "I really feel the pain of what our society is going through." She said the show deals with so many pressing issues, income inequality, youth unemployment, a rapidly aging society, that it's something her entire family can relate to and talk about. So many middle-class, ordinary people live with so much debt, and she could totally empathize with the people who joined the game. And I think that's arguably one of the reasons why it's so popular in America as well, is that other than just being like a fun murder game show, a lot of people can resonate with the need to enter something like that. That the bleakness of their day-to-day life is high enough that it is impacting their like livelihood and their survival. Like they can't afford the things that they need to take care of themselves or others because the system in and of itself is setting them up to like have to be cruel in order to get those things.
Yeah, and the game like is also culling the herd, right? It's like these people are not going to amount to anything anyway, so we don't feel bad about them dying. Like you're doing a benefit to the rest of Korea by removing them as like people who are indebted. Like they just disappear, that's it now. And maybe there's a insurance policy and now their family can be better than if they were alive, right?
Yeah.
And it's I think like you know the fact that they chose to go back, like that's such a big thing. In like what that person said in the article is like I could totally empathize with them joining the game, because it's one thing if you're just plopped into a game and you think like I have no way out like physically, so I have to fight to survive. But this was like I have no way out financially in the real world, so I have to fight to survive, which gives us this whole other level of like, would you do that? Is life that hard for you? Like,
well, if you think of like all the like what if scenarios that kind of pop up where it's like, for how much money would you do this horrible thing? Because arguably within the system that we exist within has made it essential to have money, and that money is the thing we need to solve all of our problems that should not exist in the first place. But that's not like people don't always like critically think and think like, hey, maybe the problem is that actually this system shouldn't exist is all. But instead, we need to figure out a way to exist within the system because there's no stopping it, which isn't true. But it does seem like when you keep a population, as we talked about in previous episodes, so distracted that they don't have time, energy, other resources to question things, then you're forced to be in situations where the idea of entering a game where you might die would be worth it. We're entering a game into why the time you leave, you are not a good person anymore would be worth it. Sacrificing your humanity, your kindness, and even just like really thinking about like the populations that they arguably a lot of them were just regular people who have been put into this situation. I think like the main character specifically, you have like this backstory for him. And it's very relatable. Like, yes, he is like a sweet, kind of simple guy, but like he did everything arguably right up until the point where he was let go from a job that did not value him. For no fault of his own. For no fault of his own. And then was, because of the fact that he has been entered into this debt system, was unable to recover from that. And was forced into trying to work his way out in any means possible, and thus negatively impact every area of his life. His ability to take care of his mom, his ability to be a good father, because he was just so hurt by like actively this entire system that was made to hurt him. And he was just so arguably dispensable by the people who are in charge of the government and everything else that give these corporations the means to do this. That society as a whole is viewing him that way as well, because like we have been so trained to just be like, as you were saying, like they're like, it'd be better if they were gone, which isn't true. It shouldn't be true. It shouldn't be true.
People like, you're better, the world is better because you're in it, and like trying to convince people otherwise is the problem. And I think what's interesting about this show is that we get to see all these different ways that debt and like just these financial situations can contribute to them making these risky decisions. But also like that, like some characters were just honestly good, right? Like Ali is just good. He's just a good guy.
Good guy, bad situation.
Yeah. But I think like even some of the otherwise labeled as villains or the characters that get hated on, like Sang-woo, I think like I didn't hate him. I got it. I was like, he's the one, and he even says it, like, you're lucky that you have someone on your side who is going to fight, who's going to do what needs to get done. Like, I'm sorry, but like, he's had to do that. Like, he's had to put away that part of him that would feel bad to survive. And the same thing, you know, with Min Yo. Like, she's just trying to survive. She has whatever it takes. whatever she can do, and I get it. I would say the only one I didn't care for was dioxu, which was like the loan shark dude, like the mobster kind of guy. Because he didn't like, there was no part, like, he did bad things too, and like, but we didn't get enough of why he was
there
in the
wasn't
situation.
fleshing out of his reasoning, or even like what was his motivation for being there. We got the idea that if he left, he had done bad within his mob situation, so he would be murdered anyway.
Yeah.
But you don't really get like how he got into that position in the first place.
Yeah, like why he was making those risky decisions.
Yeah, and I agree totally. Like like he was from the get-go put into this situation where like he had to either fly, and when he couldn't do that because of like what society was like, he didn't start that way, you know what I mean? He was a kid.
Yeah.
And he had all this pressure from his family and other, like, he's the one who got out, and he was supposed to like just fly and do great things, and it's like, you're a human at the end of the day. He's just trying to survive.
And he has that entire group of people like on his shoulders looking at him. Like, if you can make it out, then you're giving hope to everyone else. And as someone who's like first gen, go to college, like to do like have a career from a degree that you did, like that's like unheard of in my life. Like, in whereas, so there's a lot of pressure that was on me to the point where like that's why I got student loan debt. I had no idea. No one was able to tell me what it was like and what to do and what not to do. All I knew was I had to do that, and there was no other. Like, people are like, you could go to college or you could go, do something else. I'm like, something else?
Yeah.
Like, no one ever told me there was another option. And so that's how we end up where we are. And so I totally related to like that, like where he was, and that he felt bad too. Like, he had some really like, it devastated him what he had to do. But like, what else was the other option was that he doesn't.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, he's been put in this situation where it is required for him to survive. He has to be the bad guy. He has to step on other people to push himself up. That has been that's something societally that people are rewarded for all the time. It's like, oh, you're a business person. You don't pay your workers a livable wage, but you're so successful. Look at your nice house. You know what I mean? Like, it's set up within capitalism that the way to succeed is to step on others. And if that's something that you're rewarded for, if people clap for you and say how wonderful you are, how wonderful your life is, your mom must be so proud. You know what I mean? Like, she brags about him, and it's like, recognize, like, as she's proud of her son, but like, it's like he is put in a position where his understanding of what is right and wrong as well has been like significantly skewed throughout his entire life, because he's been encouraged to take risks and step on others to get higher.
He can't fail.
He's not allowed.
He absolutely cannot fail.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of layers to it.
Because you want to, like, you want people to know that it's okay to fail and that we can get back up. But like that, it's just like, we can't even talk about it, so we can't know that you're in trouble, so we can't help you out of trouble, because you're not allowed to talk about it. So and that's like a cultural thing, and it's something we can definitely understand over here as well. And I do hope that we get people who look at Squid Game outside of just like, okay, it's gory and fun and like heartbreaking and murder games, whatever, and actually look at it for the capitalism critique that it is, and like that same emotion and how sad you feel and how like riled up you feel, like turn that over and aim it towards not letting something like Squid Game become real. Like, I know it's not, like, it's super preposterous, but like the premise of rich people harming lower income bodies for just cause.
It's something that happens now.
Fictional.
That's not that's not fictional. That happens every day. Every day of our existence. A version of the Squid Games in a less gory and brutal way has the equal result of people dying, being hurt, or otherwise like unable to survive because of these systems.
And it's also like, even just thinking of like the aesthetics of it, like using these bright colors and like using kids games, like there's this illusion that it's fine. Like there's like this like facade of like, this is just a game. It's a kid's game. Of course you can get out. It's totally equal.
But the cost
like,
is death. Yeah.
But it's just a distraction. Like you see that and you think like, oh, this is what?
That's so legit.
This is goofy, you 100%. Know? And then it's like, no, it's actually terrifying. Like Facebook, you can go ahead and change your name to Meta. Like, go ahead. You're still Facebook. Like, you're still a problem. You're still surveying people and giving and selling their information. Like, no. Like, you're still a problem. Changing the name isn't going to change anything. So,
it's just making it look nicer.
Yeah,
so that because it's something that's already acceptable in its bright, fun packaging, but is inherently disgusting and horrible and evil.
Yep. Well, yeah. So that was our super long episode of Squid Games. I knew it could like, and there's like, as you were talking, I was like, and then there's another thing.
Yeah.
Like
we'll have to talk about it again. Like I know we're going to talk about murder games for this entire month, but we'll have to come back to Squid Games, I think. Because one, if there's a season 2, but also just because there's like so much that can be said about the dynamic at play. Yeah. Like how in the world would we be able to cover the complexities of capitalism and Korean culture within even an hour and a half?
Yeah, we could have a whole series about that because there's so much media out there that you really like. Every single thing that Bong Joon-ho has made is some kind of statement, like whether it's about like environmentalism or capitalism or just like people need to be better to people into our planet. Sure, Kingdom, like I said, like that's a whole thing about classism. Like there's so much, and like even stepping away, there's like other cultures who are doing the same thing, and we just need to like pay attention to them. Yeah. And I knew I was like, this episode is going to be forever because I wrote like an entire book and I was like, and this isn't even everything. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope like, you know, it's not killjoys because you're enjoying it, but you're also learning. And that's the whole point of really good media is that you can enjoy something and also learn something while you're doing that.
Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're not like crapping on it. We're like, no, this is like this idea. So cool. This is like, learn from it. Don't just be like, haha, fun little pretty color box time, happy games.
Don't be the pink.
Learn from don't go to a Great Gatsby party dressed as rich people. Murder the rich people. Yes. Redistribute the wealth to everybody else. We don't condone murder at the Ghouls. We don't.
We don't.
Okay, don't murder them, but take all their money.
But let's take it from them and let's
take all of their money and redistribute it.
They don't need it. What are they going to do?
Solve hunger.
They're going to die.
Solve hunger.
Before they ever spend
solve housing inequities. Actually educate human beings.
Value
life.
Collar jobs and value workers. If they're essential, pay them an essential salary. And don't be surprised that no one wants to work for $10 an hour anymore because it's 2020 and that's preposterous.
Unskilled labor doesn't exist. If there's labor.
Yeah, it's skilled.
It's all skilled.
Someone's got to do it. Rude. Anyway, so many things we have to say. I hope you enjoy this series because it's going to be a lot of this, but also fun. And hopefully we turn you on to some pretty interesting series or films about games and that are also educating and murdery at the same time because it's like two of our favorite things. So don't get married.
Delete your kids. Counter offer. Burn all the money. Money doesn't exist anymore. We don't have a system where money is necessary and we just exchange goods and services for like actions.
Yeah. Or other goods and services.
Exactly.
Like you do a thing and I do a thing and now we can swap. So now you have the thing that I do.
Yeah.
And
we don't need money. That's the secret. The secret is we don't need currency or money. We just need to not be horrible people.
Scarcity is a myth.
Yeah.
So there's plenty to go around.
We just need to give people what they need. Also, start shoplifting and dumpster diving. Do it. They waste so much. Here we are.
Yeah, that's like in our Buy Nothing group when we lived right on the outskirts of like some of the gentrified areas. And
people would post away
like super expensive stuff. We'd be like,
Roombas,
yeah, I'll take it.
Nice
Shame
things.
I don't know the word.
Right.
Pride,
like,
no, thank you.
I just need things to survive, and they should not be behind a paywall.
Yeah. But yeah, So
that's all. That's my rant.
Make sure
I'm
you
done.
like and subscribe. Check out the rest of the series. We're looking forward to it. Let us know what you think about Squid Game. And if there are anything that we left out and you're like, I would love an episode 2 where you did this, like,
yeah, we covered Midsummer twice. Let's go.
Yeah, we did Midsummer twice. We did something else twice before.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm going. I'm
Let's
ready
do it
for
again.
it. Let's do it. It's just so good. And very sad.
Yeah. Actual
yeah.
buy.
Yeah, for real, bye now.